The kettle whistled, sharp, lonely, breaking the quiet of the house. I turned off the flame and poured 2 cups of tea, just as I always did, one for me and one for him. Thomas had been gone for months now, not in the grave, but in the silence of his own world. He lived in that small room at the end of the hallway, surrounded by old books and fading photographs. He spoke less, smiled rarely, and sometimes I wondered if he even remembered I existed. Still, every evening I made 2 cups of tea, because that's what love becomes, doesn't it? A habit, one you can't seem to break even when the reason for it no longer answers. I placed his cup on the table beside his chair, the one he hadn't sat in for weeks. The steam rose for a while, twisting softly in the air, and then it disappeared. And for a moment, I felt the same, fading quietly into the background of my own life. The evenings grew longer after that, the kind of silence that hums in the corners of old rooms, familiar yet heavy. Sometimes I'd hear the floor creak and imagine him walking in, asking me, "Is the tea ready, love?" But it was always just the house settling. He wasn't gone, not really. He was here, somewhere between the past and the present, alive but unreachable. Some days, he'd sit by the window for hours staring into the garden. I'd ask what he was thinking about. He'd smile faintly and say, "Oh, nothing in particular," but his eyes told me otherwise. He was drifting, not away from me, but away from the world itself, as if he'd packed his memories and started walking towards some quiet place inside his mind, a place I could never follow. I'd leave his tea on the table until it went cold. Then I'd pour it down the sink and whisper, "Maybe tomorrow." But tomorrow never came. Only the same silence and 2 cups that no longer meant us. It happened one Sunday afternoon. The light was soft, the kind that makes everything look gentler than it feels. Thomas sat by the window again, his gaze fixed on the rose bushes outside. I just brought him tea the usual way, 1 sugar, a drop of milk. He smiled politely when I handed him the cup. But there was something in his eyes, something distant. After a while, he asked, "Excuse me, but have we met before?" The cup slipped from my hand and shattered against the floor. The sound was sharp, final, like a door quietly closing. I looked at him, hoping for a flicker of recognition, but there was none. Only confusion, kind, gentle, but empty. That was the moment I understood. He hadn't left me. He'd simply forgotten the way back. I cleaned up the tea in silence, and as I swept up the broken pieces, I realized I wasn't mourning a man who had died. I was mourning a love that had slowly faded from his memory. That night, I sat by the fire, holding his old mug in my hands, the one that said, "Forever yours." And I whispered, "I suppose forever means until the mind forgets." The next morning, I made only 1 cup of tea. The kettle still whistled, the clock still ticked, but the second cup stayed on the shelf. I realized something that day. Love isn't measured by who remembers, but by who keeps remembering. Thomas's world grew smaller after that. Some days he called me Margaret. Other days he called me Miss. And sometimes he didn't speak at all. But I learned to love him differently, not as the man who once held my hand, but as the soul who once built a life with me. Every evening, I'd sit by his side, read him old letters, and tell him the story of how we met, the rain, the bus stop, the cup of tea he spilled on me. He'd smile faintly every time. Maybe he didn't remember the story, but I think he remembered the feeling. And that was enough.